All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Eliam Henderson, and today we're discussing the market analysis summary for our top four aircraft. And these aircraft were selected based off of our mining aggregate company and their expansion to Oklahoma. So without any further ado, my top four picks for this company are going to be the TBM 930. It is able to fit 5 passengers and 1 pilot. With full fuel, it's got a useful load of 584 pounds, comes in at a price point of about $4.2 million. It's got a range of 1,514 nautical miles and a top true airspeed of 330 knots. Next up is going to be the Eclipse 550. It's able to fit 4 passengers, 1 pilot, and a useful load of 431 pounds with full fuel. Price point of $2.5 million and a range of 1,190 nautical miles. Top true airspeed of 369 knots. And next up is the King Air 350. The King Air 350 is able to fit 9 passengers and 1 pilot. With full fuel, it's got a useful load of 1,604 pounds. Price point of $3.5 million. A top range of 1,489 miles and a true airspeed of 312 knots. The last on our list is the Citation CJ4. It's able to fit 9 plus 1 pilot. It's got a full fuel useful load of 1,122 pounds. Comes in at the highest price point of $9.2 million. It's got a range of 1,955 nautical miles and a top true airspeed of 442 knots. So this is the spreadsheet of our 4 aircraft. I'd just like to mention I chose aircraft that were all single pilot capable just because it's a new company getting into on-demand air travel. So it reduces the cost of pilot salary, insurance, and generally a lower price point for aircraft to get into. So I'll further break this down into 10 areas of interest when selecting an aircraft. So that being said, at this point, I realized that the CJ4 is kind of unrealistic for this company. It's almost $10 million. Cost of maintenance alone is going to be exponential, and the time savings is not all that great when they're just flying local flights, not international, I should say, domestic. So I kind of just left that there as a reference point for what the company could grow into. But for our current mission set, the CJ4 is not really realistic to meet our mission. That being said, if we compare the other 3, the lowest entry cost or acquisition cost is the Eclipse jet at $2.5 million. Range, again, the highest range is going to be the CJ4. That comes with the cost. But excluding that, it's kind of a toss-up between the King Air and the TBM. The TBM has better range, but is more expensive and only comes with 1 engine. The altitudes, again, Jet World, they can get up into the flight level 40s. Turboprops aren't really designed to get up that high. With that being said, out of those, the real reason you want to get that high is to kind of avoid weather and go over the tops of some cells. But for our mission, again, we can work around weather, delay flights, push flights back, plan accordingly to not have to deal with that weather or just go around it. So altitude, not a huge factor here. The max true airspeed between the aircraft, again, CJ4 coming in the lead with everything. But second place was going to be the Eclipse 550 with a 369 knot true airspeed. That being said, the altitude does kind of vary when these aircraft can hit those top true airspeeds, so keep that in mind. And then besides that is the maximum load range. So if we loaded the aircraft as heavy as we could get it, how far could it go? The best is going to be the TBM 930 with 1,514 miles when you exclude the CJ4. Again, the Eclipse and the King Air, right around the same place, about 850 nautical miles for the both of them. And then you have the max fuel payload, or if we loaded the aircraft with as much fuel as we could, how much weight could we carry? So out of these, again, the best aircraft is going to be the King Air at 1,604 pounds, with the smaller single engine TBM and the small Eclipse jet barely being able to carry much weight. It'd basically be enough to fill the seats with people and no baggage if they were light people. Up next is a time comparison for all the aircrafts between 300, 600, and 1,000 nautical mile trips. When you look at these aircraft, all the times are pretty similar when you exclude the CJ4. The CJ4 is really cooking, and it's able to really knock off some time on these trips. But between the other aircraft, they're all coming in at about an hour for a 300 nautical mile trip. I mean, it's a 2-minute difference between the Eclipse jet and the TBM, and a 4-minute difference between the Eclipse jet and the King Air. That being said, as we go further in distance, those spreads become a little bit bigger, but really not that bad in the grand scheme of things. I mean, you're talking another 16 minutes between the TBM and the Eclipse jet. That's not too bad. Sorry. Where it's really going to become important is the cost per 300 nautical miles, or roughly the cost per hour to utilize these jets. And when we compare those, the TBM has the lowest numbers. That being said, it's only $596 roughly per hour to use the TBM. The Eclipse jet's a little higher at $641 an hour, or 300 nautical mile trip. And then the King Air at $1,293, followed by the CJ4 at $1,279. So what does that all mean? I don't know if I can get my slide to work here. What that's really getting to is the time savings and the actual aircraft utilization. So if we go back to our city pair analysis, the TBM would be utilized by the entire company right now 380 hours a year. With the expansion, 400 hours a year, with a total time savings of, with the expansion, of 676 hours. With the Eclipse jet, and after the expansion, we'd be utilizing that aircraft 386 hours, almost 87 hours per year, and saving 680 hours using on-demand versus using the airlines. Up next is the King Air. We'll be utilizing that aircraft after the expansion to 413 hours a year, and saving 671, almost 672 hours a year by not using the airlines. Last is the CJ4. Again, CJ4 is going to have some of the best numbers possible. We're going to be using that aircraft the lowest amount of time because it's faster. It's 307 hours a year, and we're saving 705 hours by using on-demand versus going to the airlines. So overall, what does all this mean? Well, when we look at all four aircraft, the ones that stands out is going to be the CJ4. But in the current state of this company, and it's just starting off looking at aircraft and acquisition of an aircraft to use in its on-demand travel needs, I would not recommend that expense. It's a really high price point. It's a lot of aircraft, a lot of maintenance costs, hangar fees, stuff like that. It's not realistic for a company just starting off to go ahead and purchase something like a CJ4. That being said, the Eclipse 550 is probably going to be the best starter aircraft due to its low acquisition cost, its low flight hour cost. The aircraft is exceptionally fast. However, this does come back to bite you in the butt with a low useful load. So if it's just the COO flying, that might be perfect for him to bring bags and whatnot. It's going to get him there fast. It's going to get him home fast, and it's got a low operation cost. However, the maintenance is pretty high on turbofan aircraft. With all that being said, if you wanted a good aircraft to grow into as a company with still a low acquisition cost, it's going to be the King Air 350. It's it's perfect to suit pretty much all the company's needs going forward. So overall, my personal pick for the company to consider would be either the Eclipse 550 or the King Air 350. If it's more concerned about its current mission, what's going on right now, then the Eclipse 550 is probably going to be the best bet, just to get your foot in the door, low costs, and be able to save a ton of time. If they wanted to acquire an aircraft that's tried and true for many years, it's the most common corporate aircraft, and to buy something that the company is able to grow into, I highly recommend the King Air 350. It's got a low acquisition cost of a used aircraft. It's got a really high useful load, good range, good speed. It's got added safety with twin engines. You're not relying on one such as the TBM is. The cost per hours, it's high, but it's not that high in the grand scheme of things. It was about $1,200 or $1,200. Maintenance costs on it's not as bad when compared to a CJ4 or a jet engine aircraft. It's a turbo prop aircraft, not a turbofan, and pretty much every airport that's able to take corporate aircraft knows how to service King Airs. They've just been around for a long time and are good for that reason. It's able to seat the most people, and it can actually take those people versus the other aircraft where it might have 5 seats, but you really couldn't fit 5 fatties in there with a useful load. So overall, King Air is probably the best way to go for the company if they're looking to buy an aircraft that is able to meet their current needs and their future needs, and to be able to grow together as a company with the aircraft and the flight department, and to continue to utilize that same aircraft rather than in a couple of years having to go back through the process and thinking about what the next aircraft would be. If that's something they wanted to go with, then getting with the Eclipse jet might be a great idea. And then further down the road, upgrading to the King Air or another aircraft such as the CJ4 is a viable option. Overall, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed.